Hey guys, welcome. We are going to be learning about events to the Civil War today. So I hope that you already printed out this sheet because we're going to be cutting and gluing it in and drawing some pictures and things to help us understand what it's about. And at the top of your next clean page, we just finished up learning about folks moving out west. Okay, and so we're going to talk about some problems that are going to lead to another major war. Okay. Do my little banners. Okay. Events to the Civil War. Civil War is a war between members of the same country. America is going to go to war with America. We're going to have brothers fighting brothers on either side of the war, fathers fighting sons. We're going to have family members on both sides of this battle. This war. And so how does this happen? We've talked in the past that people don't just wake up in the morning and be like, woohoo, we're going to go to war. So let's make some connections about how these divisions started to happen in our own country, because we really have a country divided here when we talk about the Civil War. So this is your Padlet for this week. There's the page that you need to have printed over there on Tuesday. And so we're going to make some connections and talk about this big word here, sectionalism. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. When we first have Europeans coming over here to the Americas, before we even become the United States, in 1619, the first slaves came over and were sold in the Virginia colony. Bad, not good. Slavery, boo, okay? So what else has happened since those colonies were formed? Well, we had the Revolutionary War where we won our independence from Great Britain. We wrote the Declaration of Independence, and here we see some key ideas come up about how we wanted our country to be seen and how we wanted our people to be treated. And right there at 1776, we say we want all men created equal. Okay, we want the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone. Yet slavery is still going on. So we can already start seeing a divide right there. Some folks are saying everyone created equal, and some folks are saying, nope, we got slaves, they're not equal. We won the Revolutionary War in 1781. Great. We started coming up with our new government. We wrote our Constitution in 1787. And right there in the preamble, the introduction to our Constitution, we say that we want to promote the general of welfare. That means everyone in general should be well, everybody. And we want to promote the blessings of liberty, the blessings of freedom. And yet there are still slaves. Even in the Bill of Rights, those were the rights for everyone. Okay, and we still see slavery happening. So there are some folks saying, we want this to happen. We want to have this good country that gives everyone equality and supports liberty and freedom. And yet on one side, we have people that still have slaves. Okay. In 1803, we talked about the Louisiana Purchase and Lewis and Clark exploring that new land. Well, what that does is not only do we have the states over on the East Coast, that are making the Constitution, but we're adding new land. And so the question comes up, are we going to allow slavery out west and all of this new territory? Are we going to allow slavery? Okay. In 1808, importing slaves, that means bringing new slaves over from other countries, is outlawed. But yet the slaves that are here are still in slavery, still not free. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, what is happening in the new country that's going to lead to war? And what we see are big divisions, big sections popping up. So today we're going to talk about those divisions and really what caused these two different groups to think differently, because there are always two sides to a war. So on your notes, we've got events to Civil War, and a word that you need to know today is sectionalism. Okay. And that's when a group of people, okay, sectionalism is loyalty to your section, see where it comes from, or region of the country, rather than to the whole nation. And the sections that start to arise are really the folks that live in the northern section of what is the United States, those that live in the southern section of the United States. They start to have very different opinions. And the folks that live in the north are loyal to what the north thinks, and those that live in the south are loyal to what the south thinks. And they don't really care about the whole country. They are choosing based on what they know and what they think, and they live very different lives. Okay, so I'm going to show you the map on our Padlet just to kind of give you an idea. This is when we're looking at the United States at that time. Let me see if I can get it bigger for you, my darlings. There we go. These blue areas here are what were the northern states. On this side, we've got the Mississippi River here, okay, right through the middle there. And up north would be the northern states. They also are later going to be called the Union, okay. Down here we have in the red the southern states. They're going to become known as the Confederacy when we talk about war. Here in the yellow, we have ones that are right there in the middle. They're kind of not fully on side with the North and not fully on side with the South. They're on the border. And so when we talk about the North and the South, we're talking about this area of the country. We just got this area. Remember, we talked about James K. Polk and annexing Texas and bringing in parts of the West. So when we refer to out West, we're referring to west of the Mississippi River and the decisions that have to be made about what we're going to do with all of that land. And that starts creating problems in our country. Okay, so we're going to start looking at some of the differences and why they did not understand each other, the North and the South. So I'm going to have out that sheet that you printed off, okay? And I'm going to cut out this top one and we're going to discuss it and glue it in. So cut it out with me and let's get ready to discuss it. Just that first box right there. Just like so. And you may want some colors, red pen, your highlighter as we go along today, okay? Well, one of the first differences that we see come up with the North and the South has to do with economics. I'm going to highlight economics. And economics is how they make their money. So I got a green. I'm going to do dollar bill signs, yo. Whenever we're talking about economics, we're talking about the money. Okay, let's start with the northern side. Up north, we have talked about industrial revolution, and that was really going strong in those northern cities because we have a lot of northern cities, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, all kinds of big northern cities, okay? So the North was industrial and made money through factories. So we saw some videos and pictures of the factories that are happening up north. And in those factories, they do not have slaves. No slaves, no slave labor in the North. Instead, they are paying their workers. We found out rather poorly, but they are paying their workers. And so people are working and making money in factories, and the factory owners are making even more money, but it's all centered around factories in big cities, okay? And this is because the northern climate up north, the climate, the weather, the temperature, okay, and the soil, the ground in which you can plant things are not good for crops, not good for cash crops. So if I went up north, say to Maine, and I tried to grow cotton, I would not do very well because it would not grow in the rocky soil in the very cold climate, okay? But the factories made their money because they made and sold cloth, shoes, funds, and farm equipment. I'm gonna have to look up what that's supposed to be because I am not sure. That is a typo. So down here, while I'm looking that up, I'm going to draw a factory just to get some pictures in my mind. We'll do like a little box here, my little box here for a chimney, maybe another one over here, maybe some pipes sticking up. And we'll have smoke billowing out because it was very polluted, as we saw during the Industrial Revolution. Okay, maybe some windows. Maybe a big door for people to come in and out of. So big city living. Big city living, okay? So if I read maybe on the quiz, and it said, I work in a factory and I do not believe in slavery, would I be talking about the North or the South? I hope you would say I am talking about the North. That should be guns. Hello, guns. So the North has factory to make guns as well. That's going to come up, help them in the war later on. On the other side, down south, okay, life was centered around farming or agriculture in the South. And on those farms, on those plantations, their workforce was slaves. They did not pay them to go out in the fields and work. So they were making money off of slave labor. That's what they relied on. If you took slaves away, they wouldn't have anybody to grow the cotton, to pick the cotton, to grow the indigo, to pick the indigo, to grow the tobacco, dry the tobacco. Okay, so the South were dependent on the slaves. They did not want to pay them. Why? Greed. Money makes people greedy. And if you have to pay your workers, you're going to make less money. If you don't have to pay them, you make more money, right? So here in the South, we've got farms and we've got slaves as the workers on the farms. So these two groups of people are already thinking differently because the South is dependent on slaves. If you take my slaves away, I'm not going to make any money. Whereas the North doesn't need slaves. They are paid factory workers. They already have a workforce that is paid and is not slaves. So two very different positions and two very different ways of thinking. And down here in the South, you can see why we still are some of the growers of crops because we have a better climate. It's sunnier, it's warmer, and we know plants need photosynthesis in that sun. And the soil here is rich, it's fertile, it's not terribly rocky. That means it is great for growing those cash crops. And those cash crops are cotton, indigo, and tobacco. So over here, I'm gonna do some like this, and I'm gonna put some poofy balls and some little leaves on it to make some cotton. That's what cotton looks like, sort of. Maybe just some little more leaves. And I'm a color person, so I got my crayons out. Okay. And this side's gonna be all green and farming. And this side I'm gonna make with my factory all brown brick building. Gray. Lots of factories. Okay, so when we're talking about how they make their money, agriculture, slave labor in the South, factories, paid labor in the North. Okay, so you can already see two different mindsets there. Okay, find your next box here. Okay. All right, and cut it out and glue it in. So if maybe on the quiz I said this area supported slave labor because of their plantations and agriculture, what side would you choose? You would choose the South. All righty, I'm going to go ahead and glue this one in as well, talking about the population. Okay, so get that cut and glued in. Go back and highlight some of those words. They're underlined, but just keywords you might need to know about. Right, we're going to talk about the population. The population is the number of people in an area and where they lived. Okay, population. There's a keyword here. We're going to start talking about the north side again. So remember, we talked they're in factories, they're in cities, right? Well, here, most of the north was urban. Urban means that people lived and worked in cities, which is what we set up here, right? But urban is a key word that means city living. Okay. Slavery was prohibited for the people in the north. It was against the law, prohibited in a lot of the northern states. Okay. And Black people were considered free and were paid for their labor, just like any other worker in the factories. Okay. So here I gotta make my city and have my factory here again if I want. And then more city buildings. Maybe this is a tall apartment building. Okay. Lots of people. Everybody everywhere. Maybe I'll have a little shop here. It's got a little awning on it. Ooh. Doesn't have to be perfect, but draw a city, the factories. Well, there's going to be another factory over here. Oh, and another one. This one looks different. There. Ooh, lots of people. People everywhere, people. Okay, tightly packed together. Okay. So people were used to living in tighter spaces together. Okay, which can cause conflict. But in this case, they were more welcoming to a variety of people. The cities tend to have more immigrants coming in from other countries. And so you may have several different languages being spoken in just one city block. You know, there may be somebody speaking Italian and Spanish and English and German all there together. So they had to really learn how to join together. They didn't really understand up north this idea of owning someone else. They didn't understand why that was still needed when they were already having all this variety of culture and people. All right. In the South, however, so this is over in the South, how they lived, most of the South was rural. It's a fun word to say. Rural. Okay. And that means people lived in small villages, on farms and plantations. So I'm going to draw a house over here. I'm going to do a plantation house over here. And there is a picture on the Padlet you can look at. There may be a house here. There may be some trees. And then maybe further down the road, there may be another house. And there's a few people. Gonna have some crops growing. Those are crops having fun. So farming, right? Lots of land between the houses. So it's more spread out. Okay, have to travel by horse to get from place to place. Okay. So they're more spread out. And it was the slaves that provide most of the labor on the plantation. So we might have some slaves laboring in the fields. Okay. And the crops were produced with slave labor, which was critical to the South's economy. Critical means that without the slave labor, just imagine if every teacher in the school quit right now and it was just kids. Do you think a whole lot of learning would be going on? No. Well, same thing. If they freed all of the slaves, do you think any of those crops would be getting grown? No. And that's what the South was afraid of. Okay. They thought if they paid them, if they paid them or just let them go free, they wouldn't be able to sustain their way of life. So they were doing evil, bad things for money. Okay. Slaves were considered property. They were not considered people, guys. How terrible is that? They were considered the same thing as owning your book. They were property. They were owned. I just can't imagine thinking that way about people. It's kind of beyond, it's beyond Miss Patterson and her brain cells. If you want to add a couple little colors here. I don't know why that's purple, but it is. I don't think there were any purple buildings. Okay. Again, when I think about the time, it's real sooty and polluted because they did not have regulation laws on polluting the air like we have now. And so here in the South, all this is going to be farmland and farmland. Oh, this is my road here. So hopefully you're starting to see some differences in these two sections of our country. Okay, here we go. Get that next one out. And I'm going to have to flip my page. So if you need to pause, please do so. And so I'm cutting out social interactions, social, okay? So I got to flip. And as you can see, it really comes down to how they earn their money. And the North is saying no slaves, and the South is saying yes slaves. And that's really going to be a big part of the war. I mean, that's why they go to war. That's it. That's one of the big reasons. Someone will say it's about states' rights, but it's really about states' rights to have slaves. So that's a big thing that leads our country to war, because some folks are like, hey, we said liberty and justice for all. And you ain't doing that in the South. All right. Social is how people interact with each other. And social status is kind of like, if you're thought about as wealthy, if you're thought about as being an upper class person, how you became popular. Okay. Well, in the North, you became a success by making money. So it was based on your economic status, your money. Okay. If you had money, then you could be considered popular and wealthy. Okay. The North was growing and changing really fast because of all that industry. There were new inventions coming out of the North. And so the North really, if you invented something and made money off of it, if you were hardworking, they valued that. You could move up. You could go from not having a lot of money to working hard and doing better for yourself. You become more popular and wealthy. Okay. And we talked about immigrants to the US, mostly settled in the North, and they brought new ideas and new cultures with them. And we used this word during the California Gold Rush, entrepreneurs. Those are people who started their own businesses. And this could also increase their social status. So you could rise up in social status. You know, you got invited to the good parties, the wealthy parties with all the good food as you increased up in social status. And you could do that through new ideas, hard work, opening your own business and working hard at it. You could move up. Okay. You had the opportunity to grow in status and do better for yourself. Just like we encourage you to get your high school degree, to try and go to college, because the more education you have, the better piece of paper you got, the better jobs you can get, which will lead to better money, which will lead to an easier life. You can grow. Those were the kind of ideas that were coming out of the North. So you had the opportunity to grow. Okay. So here you are on the steps of life. Start out with only a penny in your pocket, but you work hard and you can grow. Get my green again. You can make money. You can make friends. Okay. You can grow. In the North, that's kind of their mindset, is that folks can change how they start their lives. Oh, I got to go over to the South. I realize I flipped the page. This is the North. The South, if you need to label it. In the South, your success was based on the social group that you were born in, your social status. Okay. Whatever group you were born in. Okay. Highlighter. That's called social status. And I'm going to put group you were born into. Okay. It was like a level system, and you were supposed to stay at your level, not growing. You stay at your level. And the words there is know your place. Okay. They like to use that a lot. Know your place. If you're a slave, you're always going to be a slave. You're a servant. You're always going to be a servant. Okay. You don't get education. You stay that. You do not rise up. Okay. There was very little opportunity for growth or change. Okay, very little opportunity for growth or change. And they had these levels. The top level were the wealthy, those with the money, the plantation owners. And they were above it all. Okay. The second level was the middle class, the farmers or small business owners and workers. Third level, we have indentured servants. Those were folks that were not slaves, but they were not paid. They worked for a period of time for passage to the New World, or servants. And then at the bottom level were slaves. And you were supposed to know your place and not try and leave your level. You didn't talk or socialize or go to parties with people from the other level. They were very strict, and you only talked to the people that were in your level. You could only marry people who were in your level. You could only socialize with people in your level. So no growth. Where you were born is where you will stay. Okay, no growth. Okay, and the phrase there is know your place. So very different mindsets. All right, last box. You got this, guys. I know lots of differences between the North and the South. The last thing we're going to talk about is their politics, because it's going to be the politics on top of all of this information that lead to war. Because war is a political thing. It has to be declared. All right. And politics have to do with how people vote, what they want the government to do, and what laws that they want passed. When you talk about your politics, it has to do with the government and the laws. Okay. Most of the North believed that the federal government's power was supreme over that of the states, that we needed a strong national or federal government, that what the federal government said is what should be followed by everyone in the nation. Okay, so federal government is supreme, the highest. Okay, in the North, they believed slavery should be abolished, outlawed, prohibited. All of those words mean the same thing. Abolished, get rid of slavery. Outlawed, get rid of slavery. Prohibited, not allow slavery. Okay, and most federal lawmakers lived in the North. So we've got more of our politicians, the people making the laws, living in the North. Okay. On the other side, we got the South again. They believed the states have the right to nullify. That means to declare invalid or just ignore the federal laws they disagree with. So if the United States of America, the Congress passes a law, states in the South, Georgia was like, nah, I don't think we're going to listen to that. We don't have to do that. Isn't that a problem we had under the Articles of Confederation? Didn't we try and fix that a while ago? Okay. The South needed slaves to keep making their money. So they didn't want slavery abolished because they wanted their money. Greed is a terrible thing, guys. All right. So the South wanted to keep the slaves to make money. They didn't want it abolished. And few lawmakers lived in the South. So the South isn't happy because they feel like the lawmakers in the North are not listening to what they want. And that upsets them. Even if what they want is wrong, they just still want to be heard, I guess. Okay, so we see these big changes that have happened not overnight, but through our whole history. We talked about the Industrial Revolution happening. Well, that's taking place in the North. We talked about slavery coming over and plantations and cash crops. That's taking place in the South. And it keeps growing and growing and growing. And it finally comes to a head when we have to start making new laws about the land that we just got out west. On your next meeting, you're going to learn about abolitionists. You're going to learn about people who were against slavery. You're going to learn about some of the famous abolitionists, and you're going to take those notes and watch those videos on your own with your teacher. All right, I'm sorry for it being a little long today, but you got to know the differences because these two sides go into war. I will see you guys later.